video. I've done a few arty videos recently and they tend to do quite well, so I thought I'd do another arty one for you today. So I recently had my first graphic design client. Now I've done graphic design before, obviously. I've talked about it a fair bit on this channel, but it's pretty much all been for like my own purposes, my own products, my own branding, my own content. But this time it was actually for someone else's brand, and that's quite exciting for me because although I've been in the creative sphere for about 13 years at this point with video making, I have been constantly learning new things, and it just took me forever to learn art. And I posted a video about a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, about my first time doing art, and I wasn't sure if I was like ready at the level to start offering it to other people yet, although I have been like had success with people commenting on my stuff in the past. That's like not when they're putting money down for it. So I have a friend called Jen, and Jen recently got a PT qualification. You can see on my other channel Deborah's Dough that we have done some workouts together, and she trains with me, and it's really cool. And she is not only a PT, but she knows about like nutrition and wellness and stuff like that in general. So when she finally got her qualification sent through to her and approved, she decided she wanted to come to me to get her branding done, and the first thing we've done is a logo. So my basis for the process of how to actually design a logo is pretty much like what I've learned from other professionals in my field and the research that I've done, but also from when I have my own logo drawn up by a guy called Hampton from TS95 Studios in America, and that was a while ago now. I think like maybe 7 or 8 years ago that he did that, and I found it was a really enjoyable process, so I tried to follow a similar process to how he did it with me. You need all your standard stuff for when you're going to create branding assets, but because a logo is pretty much the base foundation, you don't ask for absolutely everything up front. You just basically ask, what's the concept you want? Give me a description of the services you're going to offer. Do you have any colors? And can you specifically provide the hex code that you want me to use as a base? And then we build out the rest from there. And can you give me 5 words to describe your brand? And I'm going to be a bit savage here and say that most people do give very generic answers. So if you can at least describe what your business does, the color you want, and kind of what you're looking for in your logo, then that's already put you leaps and bounds ahead of other people. So well done you. Jen was able to provide me basically everything I asked for. I would say the 5 words were a little bit generic, but you know, they weren't wrong. So that's a good start, you know, like trustworthy, enjoyable. I don't actually know exactly the word she said to me. I've forgotten now. I'll put them on the screen here for you just so I can double check that. And she basically said that she wanted something to do with like weights, and then also something to denote nutrition. And she originally said like maybe a knife and fork, but in my head I was like, I'm not doing a knife and fork. It's way too generic for you. I've seen people who do knives and forks, and like they don't look bad. They definitely don't look bad. My taekwondo instructor, his branding involves a knife and fork, and I wear that t-shirt all the time, although it's mainly because it's his brand and not because I believe it's a particularly snazzy shirt. It's also really comfortable. But like, it doesn't make you stand out in the marketplace, does it? Especially like most PTs start their career at a pretty cheap gym. You know, they call them like commercial gyms versus private gyms, even though you pay for like all of them. This is like your standard, we're hiring you, but we're offering you just enough hours so you can afford to pay the rent we're going to charge you to have access to our client base in our facilities, you know, that sort of gym. So you're gonna have a wall of our PTs, and you're gonna get like a poster you can put up in the loos every now and again, and that's what you're trying to compete against when about 10 other people are also doing it too, and you're all competing for the same client base. They're your colleagues, but they're also your direct competitors. So I was like, I am not letting you be that generic. So I started with the base weight plate design, and I did it like in the main color she gave me. It was this light purple lilac-y color. I'm pretty sure anyone's gonna think I'm pushed her to purple because I love purple, but actually no, she has her own type of purple. It's like I'm the dark violet-y, indigo-y sort of stuff, and she's more like lilac, so we balance each other out in that way. But no, she gave me the base purple color, and so I originally like did a weight plate design, and then I put her business name, which is Jen Leece Fitness, in the weight plate, and I originally did Jen Leece on the top and fitness on the bottom, and it's separated by 4 quadrants, so the upper and lower quadrant. And then I was like, okay, here's the base, and now I have 2 concepts to propose to you. One that I really liked, the one that I wanted to use, is going to be a bit more unusual. We slice the weight plate in half, and then we just use the lower half. We move all the text down into the lower quadrant, and we put Jen Leece Fitness together. Annoyingly, I had to warp it on its own because like text doesn't have a specific like put it in a bendy function capacity, or like draw a line and put the text to populate on this line, although that would be a really good function Procreate, I'm just gonna say. But it doesn't have that, so you have to use like the manual warp function or the liquefy function, and you just have to sort of play around with that until it works. And you can do like the advanced mesh tool to make it a bit more specific, but it's never really perfect, so I had to really fiddle with it for a while. Especially annoying after I'd already like warped the lower half and I was trying to get the upper half to warp in the opposite direction to match it. I duplicated the project a lot of times. So yeah, so I chopped it in half, and then then in the upper half, I made it like a big pile of rice with some chopsticks in it. Now this is a two-way functionality because I'm using a lot of Devi words for arty things, but like, I'm sorry, it's just in my vocabulary now. Because she wanted something to do with nutrition. Rice is very nutritional, but also Jen is a massive weeb like me, and there's an anime gym opening up near ours, and she really wants to be able to move into there. So if she's like able to build up enough of a previous experience that they would actually hire her, then it's nice that her branding will also sort of fit the vibe, and it will indicate to them that she'd be good fit for that gym. But like, I thought personality wise, it portrays Jen's sort of vibe. She really likes anime with me. She's the only person who's come to see anime with me at the cinema, so like, that's an indicator, so that's good. And then also the default bro weightlifter meal is rice and chicken and rice, so I feel like it's a really good double entendre type thing. And that was the one I was really hyped about. But obviously also she wanted, like, clients always want the safe thing. And like, I do my best to instill trust that my opinion is the correct one, but sometimes clients will always want the safe thing. So we did a second option. We had the full weight plate as originally created. And then in the remaining left and right quadrants, we would have something denoting nutrition. And I didn't want a knife and fork. If I were to do a knife and fork, I guess I would do it in the little central bit. But like, even with the big file size I used, it would have still been like quite small if you were to like embroider it onto a t-shirt or something. So I wanted it to be in the quadrants, and I ended up doing an apple and a chicken drumstick. It was meant to be a chicken wing, but I guess technically it's chicken drumstick, and that took me forever. That took me for so long for no reason. I really wanted the chicken to look realistic, so I made it like a little warpy. And then I'm actually going to show you something amazing. I was on one of my friend's Discord servers the other day, and I showed them this after like we'd finished the process and it was all like cleared and the client had paid and signed off and everything, so it's like good to go. And I showed them the chicken, and they really signaled in on the chicken drumstick for some reason. I was like, I wanted a more realistic shape, and then they got like a picture of an actual chicken drumstick and put it over, and they were like, I didn't expect it to match that well. And you know the funny part, I didn't even have a visual reference of a chicken drumstick when I drew it. I just did it from memory. So instead of it being a little circle on a stick, it's a little circle and a woo 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 and then onto the bone. So that's what I got, and I was really proud of how well that came out. So I hope I'm gonna have a use for that in the future. And then the apple I did about 1,000,000 times. I originally started off with like a half and half apple so you could see the seeds on one side, but I was like, nah, this looks too finicky, it's not very clean. So I just went with a whole apple in the end and sort of did like the little shiny thing to match the texture on the chicken drumstick without being exactly identical. Did a little stem and a little leaf, and there we go. And that was the second option. Now, while we were in the discussions for this, Jen seemed to really want to go for the safe one more, and I was like really trying to nudge her, like, it is your decision, like it is your call. I will always let my clients know it is your final decision. This is your money, you're paying, your brand. It's important that you like it because you need to be able to get behind it. But I think that this would be better for XYZ reasons. So I sort of like imparted my thoughts on the matter. And then in the end I said, but what I truly advise is go to the gym, because they've got shifts at a gym now. You go to the gym, you go around, talk to what you consider your ideal customer, your target market, and, you know, not just everyone who's around, and you go and show them the two proofs that I sent you, because, you know, I sent them like a slightly lower resolution proof with like the overlay watermark on it, you know, for testing reasons, as you do as a professional. And I was like, you take the two proofs and you ask them your thoughts on it. Now, she did have a shift the morning before she got back to me, but I don't know if she ever actually did that. I'd love to know if she actually did some customer research. But she came back and she said that she would like the rice bowl, so I was very happy. So this is the final logo that we're working with, and I like this version with the outline and the color. So when I finished the project, I provided like a bunch of different versions. I did the full color version, a black, a white, and a bordered version. I exported them all as the project file, so .psd, so they could take it to like another thing and edit it. And then I also did a PNG, so it's like see-through background for the ones where that's applicable. And then I also did a JPEG, so it's got the background. And for the full color one, I did this colorful background, which I really like. And then I did a little upsell. I described it to her halfway through, and I was like, okay, if you do a little upsell, then I could give you a color palette as a bonus. Because when I asked her, do you have any colors that you want to work with, she only provided me a single color. And now she's been showing me, because she's my friend, I train with her, we've been talking about this sort of stuff, because, you know, she wants my opinion as a marketing professional. And, you know, there's some stuff that you're willing to give to prove they're the expert in it, and then there's stuff that you charge for. This example of something that was like free is she's asked me to like look at some of her graphics, and I'd be like, tweak that, move that, make sure those aren't touching, like blah 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 blah, and then she would go and do it. They were all graphics that had very different color palettes, and I just thought were like not quite working, especially not with the main purple she gave me. I knew that they wouldn't work. It seemed like two entirely different brands that I was looking at. So I was like, okay, if you want for an extra X amount, because I'm not going to discuss the pricing here, because, you know, I'm talking about the business, that would be a bit tasteless, another X amount, which was like a reasonable percentage of the amount, then I will also throw in a color palette because for me as a graphic designer to actually be able to make something good, I needed colors to work with, and I only had one color to work with, and I needed at least a darker and a lighter version, because when you're working with logos, you don't want like too much stuff going on, which, you know, like the ones who use rainbows and stuff, ignore them. But like you don't want too many things going on because you don't want it to be too complicated to like incorporate branding, but you still need like complementary shades and you need tones that are going to match for the other colors. So I'll show you the color palette that I made for them, and I put hex codes in it as well. So people have different color profiles on different screens, and it will be perceived differently on different amounts depending on the brightness of the screen and the surface it is, and blah, 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 blah. So you have the hex code as well, so you're able to actually deduce what it is in every single software, and she can actually upload that to Canva. I gave in the .swatches file as well, which is exported directly from Procreate, so you could have the color palette into your Procreate software. I think it can also be translated by like Adobe Photoshop and Acrobat and stuff, but not every software can interpret a .swatches file, and I tried to find a .swatches to like anything converter. They don't exist. So I made the PNG by hand for the visible color palette where you could put a color picker onto it, or you could type out the codes, but then also I gave the .swatches file. And all these variable things allows the customer to have different variances, because I know far too many brands, and it's mainly martial arts brands, I'm just gonna say, I know far too many brands that have like one version of their logo and then they never speak to their graphic designer again, or they made it themselves and they didn't know the difference between like file types and file sizes and stuff. So like they'll have a really blurry stretched out logo and then a really squished one, and then there's different resolutions of different things on a single poster or something, and it's like, it hurts me deeply, and I wanted to avoid that for my friend slash client. In terms of actual files, like project files, so I use Procreate, which is pretty standard for like artist designing. Like it's an Apple exclusive software. You can buy a lifetime license for it. It's really popular. People do it all the time for their products. It's really like more artist than graphic designer, which like there's a very nuanced difference, but like functionally it's kind of the same job, except for the fact that Procreate is not a vectorizing program, which is a problem sometimes. So I had to ask Jen, what's the biggest thing you perceive yourself needing this for? And that will dictate the file size that I'm working with, because the device I'm working with, my iPad mini 5, which is, you know, very old now, nowadays, only has so much data storage on it. So that will determine how many layers I have to work with while I'm designing it. And if I'm like locking something in, I can merge a layer down and then that's fine. But I was duplicating projects because I was trying to like change different things at different times. So the size I ended up going with in the end was 4,500 by 4,500 pixels, which like should be big enough for pretty much anything print, really, that the logo is going to be on. And like I said to her, you're not planning on renting out any billboards anytime soon? And she was like, no, it's just going to be like for social media posts and digital stuff and like a t-shirt every now and again, bit of apparel, and maybe a poster slash banner stand. And I'm like, 4,500 will do that for you. The thing is, when you're doing a rasterized project, so vectorized, it uses mathematical equations when you change the size to dictate what something's going to look like, so there's no blur. When it's rasterized, that's like locking the pixels, so any growing you're doing after that point is going to blur the pixels, so it's going to look a bit like worse and a bit janky. You can totally shrink, no problem, but like growing it, that's an issue. So when I was working with a rasterized project, I had to make sure that it was big enough. So that was the files I went with, and I did it in a RGB color profile, which is good because like the whole color she gave me is pretty much an RGB color. I have a whole video, if you want to look in the link over here or in the description or whatever, on the difference between color profiles for like RGB and CMYK and all this sort of stuff. If you were to translate her logo into CMYK for like print, then you're gonna get something really bland, really desaturated, quite grey looking. So it's a good thing there's an RGB profile instead of CMYK. But like we could translate it, but it just wouldn't look really great. It's really nice that like we're getting a lot more printers and manufacturers that are actually able to use RGB printing, which like obviously it's not perfect because RGB is inherently something that's created from a source emitting light like a screen, as opposed to like us interpreting light and bouncing off of things. But like computers that can interpret RGB colors and then accurately portray them to a CMYK sort of print, or like whatever thread they have, you know, thread for embroidery or like ink for printing. So it's nice that we're getting better at that, but it's still something you got to consider. So I think that went really well. Since this project has been finished, I've asked like some people's opinions, and I get the impression that she's really happy. I have yet to receive the final review, but this literally just finished yesterday. She is probably in the future going to want like the other variants and a few of the icons that I created for the other style. Like she's talked to me about like getting more later, but you know, people got budget, so we're going to not expressly bin those files. I pretty much never delete anything, but you know, I have a promise on like all of my contracts that I save it for like maybe a week, and then after that you can't guarantee that I'm gonna have it again, and I'll like charge an archival fee for digging something back up if I still have it, but I don't guarantee that I'm gonna keep everything forever, because that's just stupid. So like she was saying that she may want the base weight plate and stuff I did in the future. I'm hoping she's going to want the little icons, because although the food took me ages and is a pain in the ass, like I'm going to put them here just to make sure that it gets some use. I feel like she could use those in the future and maybe get some other things in that sort of style, and I think it'd be really cute. So she may get more of those in the future, who knows. I am currently working my way through a massive backlog of turning my videos into blog content, which is something I do on my website, dibdobdigital.com/blog, which is linked in the description as well, if you want to consume information from me in a more written format. It's the only place I've actually got Google AdSense right now as well, so that's like a helpful thing to have that for. But I'm catching up on it. I've got like 40 something blog posts I need to catch up on. I've not converted for like a year, so this is like a really big project. But once I've done that, I will be going through and adding products to my shop for my digital services as well. So stuff like logo design, color swatches, like color palettes for branding assets, all that sort of stuff is going to be going on my website. So you'll be able to get those services from me. You can get them from me right now. It's just not in the nice automated way of going through the shop. You have to email me right now. So if you would like me to design your logo, please get in touch. I'd love to chat to you about it. In the meantime, like, comment, subscribe. Have a nice day. Goodbye.